So our center is housed within the Pacific Inclusive Education Research and Resource Center, or PEER for short. PEER is managed by faculty and staff at the Center on Disability Studies located on the University of Hawaii at Manoa campus. And the overarching goal of our center is to nurture untapped talents through inclusive practices. To reach this goal, we host monthly speaker series as well as in-person symposiums that focus on building awareness on neurodiversity and twice exceptionality. Our speaker series and symposiums are made possible through funding from the U.S. Department of Education, Jacob K. Javits Gifted and Talented Education Program grant. And as I mentioned before, we are also co-hosted today by the NSF Tapped into STEM project. So each month of our speaker series will focus on a different topic and perspectives from well-known speakers in the areas of inclusion, neurodiversity, and education. So I'm happy to introduce today's speakers. They are our very own University of Hawaii students. We have today joining us Jenny Brown, Cecile Vimon, Shayna Bing, Lee Sawyer Perez, and Eric Bendixson. So our session today will contain an empowering panel featuring neurodiverse college students sharing their experiences navigating higher education. They will share about their challenges, triumphs, and insights, raise awareness, and foster understanding. We want to highlight their experiences going to college and hope that this session will be inspirational, encouraging to other students and professionals that are neurodiverse. So please welcome our student panel. And to begin, I want to start today by asking our students to introduce themselves, tell everyone your name, where you're from, what your major is, and a little bit about yourselves.
Hi guys, my name is Jenny. I'm from Oahu and I'm currently studying electrical engineering here at the college at Manoa. I'm currently an undergraduate. And a little bit about myself, I transferred in from Kapiolani about a year ago and I recently took up crocheting, which is really fun. And I'm really glad to have you guys coming to this panel. I'll let the next person go. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Cecile. I originally grew up in Maryland, and I'm currently a PhD student in the zoology department here at UH Manoa. I recently finished my master's, actually last semester, also in the zoology program. So I'm continuing on with grad school, and I've been here for a couple years and some fun things that I like to do. Get outside in nature, and I recently rescued a kitten, so that's taking up a lot of my time. But I'm really excited to meet everyone and to share my perspective.
Aloha mai kako o Shayna Bing Keia no ka'alaia mai au I noho ahui manu I ke manawa. So my name is Shayna Bing. I'm from Ka'alaia. It's on the east side of Oahu. I'm currently living in Ahui Manu or Kahalu'u. I am a undergraduate student at the University of West Oahu. I hope to be graduating this semester. My academic pursuits would be a double major in psychology and sociology. And I'm also earning a certificate in Hawaiian Indigenous Health and Healing, another one in substance abuse addiction counseling, and another one in social science, health, and medicine. A bit about myself. I would rather be outside doing manual labor than sitting at a computer. Um, so coming back to school, I'm a non-traditional student after a pretty big gap. I have three kids at home. Has I've had to find a new version of myself for sure. And so I'm still on this journey of being a lifelong scholar. And I hope to hear some really good things and share some really good mana'aora thoughts today. So thanks for having me.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lee Sawyer Perez. I am a marine biology student at UH Manoa. I've recently transferred over from Kapiolani Community College, where I got to have some great experiences with research and hands-on work, ranging from botany to marine biology, and also a long-term project with Manuoku, the native Hawaiian seabird. And I think that describes a big part about me. I love everything zoology, marine biology, whether it's terrestrial, aquatic. I just love to learn about our natural world. And so I hope to give back to Hawaii's unique endemic organisms and fighting back all those invasive species that are trying to overrun. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, my name's Eric Bennigsen. I'm just transferred up to UH Manoa from Kapi'olani Community College also. I'm studying electrical engineering. I'm originally from Oregon. I'm a little bit of a non-traditional student also. I did 10 years of military service before I came back to college. So yeah, happy to get back into it. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for introducing yourselves. So the first question is about college and what you enjoy most and least about it. Go ahead, Lee.
Sure. I've always been school oriented. It provides some structure that I very much need in my life. I'm very routine based. I'll openly disclose I have autism, and so I routine definitely helps me keep everything in line. And so school offers that. You know, there's a set curriculum, there's a schedule to follow, and so I've always excelled in academic environments because of that, not necessarily in grades, but just following that system. So that's my favorite part about school, having a structure, saying, okay, I just got to take these classes. I just got to do this to get an A. I just got to study this. What I don't like, however, uh, is more of a personal thing. It's not so much about school, but there's so many degrees, there's so many opportunities, so many different types of pathways that I get very overwhelmed. And so one semester I'll be, as I mentioned, marine biology is my focus, but I'll see other degrees and I'm like, oh, what if I did that? I'll go to the dentist one day and say, man, I should study dental hygiene. This is so interesting. And so it's not its flaw, but its weak spot is also its strength, which is the wide amounts of opportunities that it has. And so I'm thankful that at Oahu, despite being a relatively small island, there are such ample education opportunities. So yeah, I'm very thankful for Manoa and all the community colleges that offer that opportunity.
Go ahead, Jenny.
I'll go next. I feel like mine's is like a double-edged sword. So mine's is people. I feel like for me, for people like my classmates, it's really nice to know that you're not alone in the trenches. Because I have anxiety, so it's nice to know that like the person next to me is also freaking out about an exam, or they just don't know what's going on in class, and that makes me feel like, okay, at least I'm not alone. Like we'll fail together, I guess. But on the other end, I would say is that, oh my God. So I transferred from a 2-year to a 4-year, and it was just like kind of a culture shock on just like a 2-year, they kind of understand like, hey, you got other stuff going around with your life. A 4-year is like taking 18 credits is normal. Or like that's like the other end where it's like the peer pressure from other people, which may be like indirect and not like, like not evil or anything, but it's just the peer pressure on like making sure you like graduate within a certain time. And there's also kind of like a stigma coming from a community college a little bit. So that was an interesting experience. But overall, I would say the people are positive and keep me going. Yeah.
If I'm remembering your question, you said what's the best thing about college?
Your most favorite thing and your least favorite.
The opportunities, best thing, right? I'm exposed to the opportunities I would have never had. I went on a study abroad to Japan last year. Never would have done that. Super cool. Had a fellowship with Purdue University. Never had to leave my campus. I got paid to do data analytic research, not even my major. So this is amazing, like umbrella of opportunity, I think, for scholars. Not the favorite thing is this. It's the computer thing that I can only do work, reading and writing. That's like the only way it's measured in academia. That's my least favorite way of interacting with learning. So that's my answer.
Go ahead, Cecile.
Yeah. So I think that throughout my undergrad and master's and now my PhD, definitely it's like that was just said was the opportunities and mainly like where it can take you. So I also did a study abroad in undergrad, and I was able to go to Australia and get an experience in researching a field that I really wanted to do. So that was a really amazing opportunity. Then being able to go to school here, and all the chances that you have if you look for them and they're there. So we definitely have a great university for that. And I would say the least favorite is the deadlines and generally the amount of work that goes into being in school, but that's part of it is you're learning, and to learn you have to do homework and you have to meet deadlines. But I feel like in the end, if you learn a lot, then you're benefiting. So it may take time, but at the end, you're going to have a lot more knowledge. So I think that's really exciting.
Nice. And I think all of your responses kind of leads to this next question. With so many options and things that you guys can do, how do you balance it all? So how do you balance your schoolwork with other aspects of your life? And I'm gonna put the question in the chat as well for everyone. There you go. Go ahead, Eric.
So a lot like many other college students, I have a packed schedule with, working two other jobs, full-time class schedule and such. I mean, the easiest thing that I've found to do is just to print out a physical like paper and, 30-minute blocks and fill in like what you have to do so you can visually see what actually needs to get done. And then, throughout the term, things will change a little bit, shift here and there. But just having that physical, template of this is where I need to be this time. I have these commitments, really helps me to stay organized, especially during the term.
Shayna.
So I have a two-part answer. Um, I think you have to know yourself. So I have normally 19 credits a semester since I started school. And when I tell that to most people, they go, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And I'm like, this is my speed. I'm interested in that many things. I want to study that many things. And then I have a friend who takes 10 classes a semester, and I'm like, "What's your problem?" But that's her speed. Um, you got to know, like, I have kids. So knowing yourself is one thing, what you're capable of, what you're not capable of. And then the second thing is keeping your values in sight. So I have kids. I could definitely just plug away in my room and neglect the world and get 10 classes done, but that's not my value. I also don't value, I do want to get good grades, but I don't value academia over, say, my holistic view of myself, my family, my culture, those things. When I was doing only schoolwork, I was at my personal worth. So I find I had to kind of abandon some of my academic pursuits to be well, to be happy with myself, to be on an overarching journey of like, well, if I get a piece of paper from school, but I kill myself in the process, is it worth it? So really kind of being honest with your costs and benefits, like what are you trying to pursue? What is the point of what you're doing? And I think that hopefully keeps me kind of coming back to the same place. Like, is it still working? If it's not working, do I want to change the goal or do I want to change how I'm pursuing the goal? Because oftentimes I want to quit every single day, and that's not always the best choice. But sometimes not doing schoolwork and going outside and working in my yard was the best solution for doing a good job at school, if that makes sense. You're having a balance of knowing yourself, knowing what doesn't work and what does work for you, and trying to just be honest with that. That's not going to be how your peer does school, and that's okay.
Yeah, gotta touch grass. Very important. Go ahead, Lee.
I can definitely speak to both what Shayna and Eric have mentioned. The semester that comes to mind for me was a few years ago, and it was actually my first in-person semester. And so, like Eric mentioned, it's a typical college situation. I was working several jobs, full-time classes, and then in the process, I was also planning my wedding for next year, and I just struggling finances, living situation, so lots of things on a plate, and I felt that the more I added, the more I could go, but speed did not equate to health. And so I soon crashed, burnout, and the next semester I actually suffered the opposite, where all that energy I put into that semester, next semester, and even then, like next year, it's like when you're up for a whole weekend. I mean, not that that's common, but days that you're really busy working a lot the next day, like you need a rest, even if you don't do anything that day, you're making up for lost energy from before. And so I learned that from that semester and then in the future as well with other experiences. And so, as Shayna said, knowing your limits and and creating boundaries is very important. However, there does come some privilege with that, where some people may be able to say, I can't study and work. I'll just stick to studying or just to work. Other people can't afford to do that. So it is a sacrifice for many people, and yeah, being aware of those limits and working within your abilities to accommodate them is extremely important. And as college students or university students, I think it's very often that we'll feel pressure to follow a certain path or timeline. Jenny mentioned feeling that pressure of UH students versus community college students. And I can definitely see that, whereas staff can and faculty can be much more understanding and have some more leeway. Not everyone is the same way. And so if it's the standard, if it's the norm, it's especially frustrating to not feel like you're keeping up with it. And with disabilities, it's oftentimes not from laziness. It's just we have a lot of energy going into just keeping ourselves stable and in place, whether it's a mental or a physical condition. And I think that more people are starting to realize that, where your performance isn't just based on what you're doing, right? It's a personal thing. And so um, for me as a person with disabilities, it was really important to recognize my value isn't from what I'm producing. It first comes from myself being healthy with the results that I have. So in summary, just being true to yourself, which takes a lot of work to identify, but in the end, it's what saved me.
So thank you guys for sharing on that question. So with knowing all these things, it sounds like maybe something good to share about is what is one thing you know now that you wish you knew before starting college? Go ahead, Cecile.
I'd say that what something, and I did know that this was something that I could do, but I guess I didn't really take advantage of it, and I wish I had. And I definitely think that it's important for anyone who's starting off college to really take it seriously and to think about this is like not be afraid to reach out for help. There are many resources on campus. There are people who you're going to meet, fellow students, your TAs, people learning your labs, your lectures. Like there's so many people that are not necessarily part of certain programs, at the university, but that may just be friends and just reaching out for help. It's really important. And if no one knows that you are dealing with something, no one can help. So that's definitely something that it's really important, especially if you're far away from home or if you don't have a lot of support yet around the university. Like there are always people who are willing to hear. You just have to, reach out. So that would be the biggest thing that I just want to drive home. Yeah.
Sorry, I'll just add on to what Cecile said. Use office hours. I don't know how many faculty is on this call, but office hours has come in a clutch so many times. And I feel like for 2 year and 4 years, they're kind of the same, very positive on students who go to office hours because it's very beneficial. And if you come in with like the right attitude, being like, I don't know. Like, please, I don't know. I tried. I don't know. They respond pretty positively. So I would say I would have a really good experience with office hours and utilizing that. And it helps take away a lot of the pressure because as a student, you're like, if I get this one assignment wrong, like it's a lot. Like you think it's like the end of the world. And it's really reassuring to have like a staff member or faculty just say like it's okay, like we love a redemption arc. That's what I tell myself, like we just love, you'll be okay, like. And it's different coming from a peer versus like the actual person teaching the class for that reassurance for the students. So that has come in handy so many times when I would go to office hours to just keep pushing forward because of that support from faculty.
If I can add to that, if there are faculty on the call, and this is just my personal opinion, I think you should have office hours that are hours you attend. I don't want to make an appointment. You just are there when you say you're going to be there because I have faculty that say, well, my office hours are Wednesday, 1 to 4, but on Wednesday at 12 o'clock, when I'm like, oh, I have a question, I have to have already made an appointment at 1, or my professor's not going to be there. And that's really not the same thing in my mind as office hours, like how if class is synchronized at 2, I'm supposed to be there at 2. If a teacher doesn't have set office hours that they're in, I don't often utilize it because I know I messed up. I should have made an appointment yesterday. They're not going to get this email. So that's my thought too. I've survived because of office hours. Students that go to office hours like me benefit when a professor's there when they say they're going to be
there. Just to add on to the question, one of the questions, like how can faculty encourage students to join office hours? So my mindset is I'm paying, oh God, I think like $500 a class. I'm getting my $500 for that class. But I feel like the students that need the office hours the most are like the students that are afraid of the professor. Because I had multiple friends say like, I'm scared to go to professor because they're like this figure above you. And I feel like it's a lot of like marketing yourself, being like, hey, come to this office hours, I'll answer your question. Like more like a gentle approach, like trying to market yourself as like a human person and like someone like, I don't know if you have like a nephew or something, like someone like a nephew that can come up to you and talk about you about their problems. And I feel like that's very beneficial to seem approachable. And it's very hard. So I can't really like give any like concrete like help, but humor helps. That's what I noticed. But yeah.
I don't know if this is your same experience, Jenny, but I have all basically online classes. I hardly go in person. So what I don't benefit from is the sidebar. Class is done. You can go ask your professor a question real fast. You can talk to your classmate real fast. Those kind of things that is like lateral learning. So office hours I've tried to use for that sometimes. Like I go into it just because I want to shoot the breeze with my professor and be like, hey, what do you think about this theory? And sometimes what I get from that is like, you don't have a question about an assignment? You just want to talk to me? And it's kind of like, yeah, is that okay? I thought you were the professor. I wanted to like glean your wisdom. That's why you're my professor. And I don't always get a positive response from that. Sometimes I'm like, Yeah, I thought you'd want to talk to me because I'm your student, but I don't know. I don't know what is that supposed to be what office hours is for? Just like just talking about whatever you want to talk to your professor about.
I think the problem goes beyond that for hours, but more towards the professor's attitude itself. Because I've had very positive experiences with office hours, merely based on the response and the attitude, kind of the marketing that you mentioned, Jenny, that professors give off during class and then outside of class as well. Because there's those two elements. If you do have a synchronous class, whether it's online or in person, there's some time in which you're picking up on the professor, whether it's because even though they're explaining the same information another person could give, it's like music. If you play it, there's going to be something of you in it. And so the professor putting themselves into the class can be a good or a bad thing. And I've had this with different classes. There was a physics class, which I innately struggled with to my core. Just physics was, I'm still struggling with it. And I didn't have the best help with the professor and felt quite the opposite. Rather than being encouraged to ask questions and recover from my mistakes, it was more of an expectation of, oh, you should already know this. And it's like, well, yeah, that's why I'm here. I want to fix this. Whereas with another professor, Nadine Wolf, math at KCC, her office hours, I'd meet with her for one or two questions, and she's like, "Oh, let's go over the rest of it. Like, you got time?" Oh, she wouldn't keep track of the time, and I'm not expecting all professors to do this. That was just her going above and beyond. But what it boils down to me mostly of wanting to access a professor for office hours is just that their response to my doubts or to my mistakes. If it's encouraging, if it's motivating, then I'm going to be very likely, very willing to go to office hours or to just talk to them. But if it's dismissive and shunning to even ask a simple question in class, that's a big red flag, you know? So pretty much just that. You don't have to be a buddy, a friend. You just have to encourage your students to ask questions. That's the main thing.
Sorry, Lee, just to add on, one of the worst office hours I ever attended here at UH, Manoa Engineering Department, just want to put that out there. I asked for help on a homework assignment. I scheduled and everything. I'm like, how do I do this problem? Now, I've asked dumb questions before in the past, and like you said, attitude. If someone came up to you in like calculus, be like, how do you do algebra? A good professor would be like, okay, I'll teach you, but like you should know this, but I'll teach you. This guy for 10 minutes said, how do you not know this? You should know this. And I quote, how did you get this far? For 10 minutes, did not answer my question at all. And I was on the verge of crying. I was like, okay, so anyways, he was one of the professors that was like, you specialize in your field. I'm like, I'm not going in that field. Like, that is the worst faculty I ever had. Ooh, that was so please don't do that. Don't shame your students for 10 minutes on why they don't know something and then just look at them and then don't help them. Damn.
The physics teacher I spoke to in class, every time a student opened their mouth, it's like, oh, here it goes. Student asked, oh, what's this? And this was through Zoom, no camera, but you could hear his face, and he wouldn't answer. He just moved the cursor and point on the whiteboard and just sit there. And then after like a 30-second break, he'd go back, I expect you guys to pay attention. And then for like 5-10 minutes, is similar to your situation, in that time that they could have answered the question, right? So, of course, these are hopefully the exceptions, but it just helps to understand what works and what doesn't.
Well, thank you all for sharing about that. And actually, talking with all of you, I did learn that a bunch of you attended community college first and then um, transferred to a 4-year university. So, if you wouldn't mind, could you share what are the biggest differences you've noticed by attending a community college versus a 4-year university? Go ahead, Jenny.
Right off the bat, I would say like community college, if you're teaching at a community college, like I can tell the difference. You went in for teaching. The majority of the staff there are really good teachers and are the ones that'll take like the time to like sit you down, explain, and they're more, I guess it's also more intimate classroom, so they get that kind of luxury because when you're in a 4-year university, you're with 30 to 100 other students, and like I understand faculty and staff just don't have the bandwidth for that many students to give them that many times. So it does make me hesitant to go to them, and they're just human, so I don't blame them. Another thing, like talking to pressure, I was 21, 22 when I transferred over to a university. I was considered old by my peers. They're like, wow, like how was like, I don't know, electricity, like that was must have been crazy, like when you like saw that like invented, and I thought it was hilarious, but I was like, it is kind of like you're in a different demographic, who's dedicated to solely studies or research, not solely, but like that's their main thing. So I would say those are the biggest culture shocks. I'll let anyone else go. Yeah.
Go ahead, Lee.
If anyone else wants to talk, go ahead. I'm just trying to fill the silences. I haven't thought about what Jenny said until now. I was taking a ancient Greek class for my humanities at Manoa, and I felt more relatable to the 60-year-old lawyer in my class than with the new straight from high school UH Manoa students. And don't get me wrong, I love it. I love having classes um, with diverse backgrounds, different uh, different demographics. But at community college, I felt that it was a bit more natural and implied that diversity was there. It was more of a, I'd say it felt more like a tide pool where it's like, oh, you got your starfish, you got your anemone, you got your little shrimp, and everyone's there just kind of hanging out, and it's really nice. Everyone's just trying to, do their own thing. And then at UH Manoa, you're in a pelagic open ocean. You're like, whoa, look at that swordfish over there. The humpback whale just tried, it's a bit more wild. Just getting across campus is more wild. There's so many buildings. Finding a class in my first semester was hard, but that's why the staff is supportive, but the staff is also a bit different. For example, shout out Julianne De La Vega, who is here at KCC. She made the intimidating experience that college was, and as a neurodivergent student on top of that, feel way more easy and like a second home almost. So, I'd go on campus to the STEM center, I'd see the faculty, I'd see the staff, I'd see other students I know, whether from Tapped Into STEM or from other classes. And it just felt like a second home. Whereas Manoa is a lot more professional. And so, again, that's kind of the point. So it's not that it's good or bad, it's just different environments, both with the same purpose of getting you into higher education, but perhaps in different ways, I guess. But I do recommend community college to anyone because the classes are same credits, cheaper, and it's a nicer transition to a 4-year university.
Hey, Eric, you have some insights to share about your transition from community college to a 4-year?
Yeah, so I'm only in my first term up at UH Manoa. So I'm still kind of figuring everything out, where everything is. I am just now learning about some of the resources that are up there. So the transition's been a little bit rough, but I'm kind of slowly getting into it.
Could you expand a little bit more on what you mean by a little bit rough? What's rough about the transition?
I guess just like knowing where everything is, knowing what resources, like where the tutoring center is, where the library is, just kind of really um, getting more adapt to the university life and how things are. Um, Meeting with professors and a little more challenging, it feels like, um, than at, the community college level. But, just trying to, using the peer mentors and such up there too. Yeah.
Do you think if they had an orientation that would be helpful?
That'd be a huge plus. That'd be a great start
Mm.
if that was available. Or even just like a link to, hey, these are all the resources that you have at the university, you know, where the online tutoring is and everything like that. Would be great.
Mm.
Things to know before we transfer. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so any UH faculty out there, just throwing it out there, maybe a little cheat sheet of how to get around and where to find services, that would be great. So do see that many of you are very active in the chat. I'm gonna assume that some of you have some burning questions you would like to ask our panelists. So I am gonna open the floor for a little bit to people in the audience if you guys want to ask questions. If there are no other questions, then I will continue asking my own. But yeah, if you have a question, now is the time to ask it.
I have a question. First and foremost, thank you for each one of you for sharing your stories. It's such a privilege and honor to listen because it we don't have the right to know what you know, and you are an expert. And thank you for Jarek and Pierre for providing this space so for us to all learn from you because you are our teacher right now and we are your student. So my question to you as a faculty member and instructor, what's your best advice for us? Well, we talked about office hours, we talked to other things, but about the resource with regards to perhaps maybe put the resource in our syllabus or onboarding. But what other things that are within our power and control of our classroom environment that can make it a more safe, brave, gracious space for you folks to meet your needs and your learning needs?
Go ahead, Jenny.
So I feel like the low-hanging fruit on providing resources for neurodivergence is just putting resources in the syllabus. That's the most accessible way that students get access to resources, and it's the first thing you see during class, the first thing that most people, and if not, I would hopefully emphasize to the students, like read the syllabus. If anyone else have any ideas?
Dana.
I did have some ideas, and I realized that this might not be everyone's understanding of themselves or the universe. So this is my humble opinion. But I have the intersectionality of being someone who like menstruates once a month and someone who's a cultural indigenous Native Hawaiian. And as a scholar in the university, what I notice is I have ebbs and flows when I'm kicking ass and when I'm getting my ass kicked. And that doesn't always line up with your deadline. And I really don't appreciate the inflexibility of some professors with, well, this discussion post was 11:59 on Friday, and any idea after that was not valid. I have 3 kids, like my son broke his back last semester. There's just so many things that have nothing really to do with being a scholar that are speed bumps sometimes to obtaining like education or experiences. So I appreciate the professors that get that ebb and flow. So one of my recommendations is no exams on Ole moons. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, the moon has a lot to do with the tide. We all know that. And it has a lot of impression on people's behaviors. So, for example, if you didn't know this, pregnant women go into labor on the full moon because of barometric pressure change. And so people act weird on full moons because of something similar to that. So when there's big storms like what's happening now, when there's big moons, people's ebb and flow change a lot. And so I notice as a neurodivergent person, my energy is wiped out when I'm having my time of the month, that's personal, but also when the moon is having its time of the month. So I've been making these informed observations for a few years now, and I notice if that's going to come up, I have to combat it differently as a scholar and try to do my work beforehand because I'm going to be not my human self during those periods of time. That's my personal answer. And I wish that some professors had a little bit more grace for understanding we have a life outside. And also maybe your student like learning experience shouldn't be only within 16 weeks. There's so much we're learning from you indirectly outside of those 16 weeks and that really rigid structure of learning, if that makes sense. I know that's a long answer. I could go on, but I'm going to cut it off.
No, thank you for sharing. Lee, you had something you want to add to that?
I have several points to make. So, Dr. Lalimia, your question itself is already, I think it already speaks for itself as an answer. Your interest in learning what could be done is, without that, there is no solution because you can't have a false interest in accommodating without it being honest. And if it's not honest, it's not going to be an actual solution. It's not going to be viable or for the long term or perhaps even the short term. So your question sounded very authentic. It sounded like a genuine interest in wanting to make academic environments more accessible for everyone. And I think that has to be just a basic for faculty, staff, and other students who want to make an environment that's accommodating to everyone. Second, Shayna brings up a great point, the ebbs and flows of mood, whether it's because of hormones, disabilities, diseases, conditions. Just there are so many factors that go into our even sleep schedule and just our energy cycles, right? Seasonal depression is a thing too. I don't know why starting every November, which is close to the end of fall semester, my brain screws itself over, and so I'm like, man, every semester is the same. So having some flexibility is helpful. I understand that there needs to be some standards and deadlines, but I actually took a class last semester. It was a differences in life cycle and sexes. It was a woman, gender studies, and biology class, and it was online, like 300 students. So there were lots of teaching assistants. So it was hard to get like direct contact with the professor, but they had a lot more flexibility, and I didn't feel my learning was jeopardized. I didn't feel like I flaked out on assignments. I felt that it was a much more accessible class, that I could give more time and attention to the assignments as needed and also as wanted, because I believe any subject could be interesting if you go with the right mindset and if it's taught in a certain way. So having some more time to explore subjects that perhaps weren't something that I would be familiar or curious into originally. For example, we had to watch a documentary on how the AIDS pandemic impacted Black communities. Very niche subject, which I honestly wouldn't have thought of. It wasn't very relevant to my life, but getting to watch that documentary, learn about it, and have the time to assimilate it, to digest it was really nice. It's nice to be able to enjoy food and not have to have dinner in the next 5 minutes. So I think it goes the same with education. You need to eat, you need to learn, but you also need to have some space to digest it. And I understand that with the limited time that comes in a semester, there are certain ways that you have to do it. But that class was sort of proof to me that it could be applied even in multiple of hundreds class. Yeah.
Christine, I did see you put a question in the chat. Although I feel it might have been adequately answered throughout this conversation just now. But if you want some follow-up, feel free to type in the chat. If not, we probably have questions. We have one more time for one more question, possibly. So if anybody else has any other questions. Thank you, Jenny, so much for joining us. I know you have to run off to class. Everybody, please thank Jenny for her time. We do appreciate it. But if there is one more question, we can get to it.
Oh, Shayna, did you ever go to college in person or have you always done it online?
Um, when I went to school the first time out of high school, there were no online options. And then after the pandemic, I feel like it's only online now. I've only gone in person for one class, and that's because it was a Lomi Lomi class. So really bad idea doing it online. But other than that, all my classes are online.
Okay.
Do you have the same experiences?
Oh yeah, since I started, I've never stepped foot on a UH campus. I've done everything online. But I've but what I noticed is that I thought I'd do better in synchronous classes than asynchronous ones, but recently, in terms of the classes I've been required to take, almost all of them have been asynchronous, and I've learned to do well in those classes too. Which ones do you do better in synchronous or asynchronous classes?
So when I first came back to school, I didn't know what that word meant. I just thought everybody was going to be synchronous. And I hated the asynchronous classes because at that first semester, I had a professor that didn't have lectures, just assigned readings and exams. I never encountered them. So I felt like, what am I doing? I'm just teaching myself in this class. But the next semester, I had a professor that had such a in tuned way of understanding people have learning differences. So she had a lecture, she had transcripts, she had book readings, she had videos, she had interactive PowerPoints. So I do really good in those classes, even though I really like having relationships. Then sometimes, because I have, to self-disclose, ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, if I have a professor that has an online class, but he's hella boring. It's like going to the dentist. It is so difficult. So I find even if it's online, in person, or asynchronous, I still have to manage my symptoms. I'm also deaf in one ear. So if I go in person, which seems like a lot more interactive, I have a difficult time hearing. And if I stay online, I can say be multitasking. So I think it just depends on what you need. I do better with relationships. So I typically like having synchronous classes. They motivate me a little bit more, but that also could be something if you're not a social person, could be benefit to having asynchronous classes too. So I guess you just kind of have to find how you can motivate yourself or find a way to succeed, if that makes sense. I don't know if anybody has anything else to add to that.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you everybody for attending today's event. I think we're gonna wrap it up here. I'm gonna put in the chat a quick survey if everyone could just take it before you leave. I do want to thank again all our sponsors for this event, as well as our student panelists for coming out and volunteering their time to answer some questions and give some of their insights. and share their experiences that they've gone through with college. So, yep, everybody, please do give a shout out, and thanks to our student panelists. Thank you all for coming. Again, please do take that post survey. I'll put the link in the chat again. If anybody wants to stay after and ask some more questions, and if students want to stay, feel free to do so. I'll keep the room open for a while. But yeah, thank you, everyone. Please stay tuned for our future events. For our February one, where we're looking to have some professionals and other faculty share about their experiences. So look forward to it. Thank you, everyone.